so many people putting posts or making videos. I don't mind going in front of the video, but it's just easier to press record and talk into the phone. And I know that a lot of the ULEZ groups are mainly people from London, so straight away with my accent, I mean, it's people don't always follow what I'm saying or have confidence in what I'm saying is the truth or fact. But there are other people who are in the post in the group who are like from Liverpool or Stoke-on-Trent or Scotland or wherever. But it is the truth. It's not a lie. I mean, someone's just put here that ULEZ is unenforceable. Look, Philip Wed OA Dip. Is that a member? Philip Webb OA Dip. Put ULEZ is unenforceable. Yet they're trying to scare you, but he's right. It is unenforceable. The reason it's unenforceable is because when Tony Blair put the congestion charge in 2002, when people didn't have access to as much information on the internet or weren't as connected as we are now through groups, when Tony Blair made the congestion charge, he didn't do it lawfully in London. In the centre of London, by the river, around Westminster, which is the original area of London, the original city, which London was from, Romans and Anglo-Saxons until it started spreading out in the Industrial Revolution. The main part of London has an area called the London Liberty, and it's in Magna Carta, and that part of Magna Carta is still law, that it has all of its old liberties and traditions. They have to be kept. And when you find out what they are, you're not to be charged any money at all for passage through London. None. That means that it doesn't matter whether you call it a toll, a charge, a fine, a fee. They're taking money from you or asking for money because you travelled through London from one place to another place. You move from here to there, point 1 to point 2, and they ask you for money. That is the basis of it. The basis is you move, right, across an area, no matter what the area is called, and after that, they take money from you or ask for money. That is the basis. You can, there's no lawyer in England who can dispute that, because that's what it actually is. That there's no word or definition which can mislead. The fact is, in that area, you cannot have money taken away from you by the government for moving across that area. And that is the law. And it is the old A5. It's the Watling Street, the old A5, right? So the congestion charge, it is illegal. It has not been challenged in the courts. It hasn't been challenged in the courts. They challenged other things, parking charges. Then there was that Crittenden case when they brought up the big Bill of Rights. The 1688 Bill of Rights doesn't have anything to do with the Liberty of London or free passage. That is particular to Magna Carta, which is way before the Bill of Rights. No one's actually raised it up in a legal case. And even if you do, you don't want any solicitors or attorneys or barristers who are affiliated with any of the main political parties or any of the ministers or MPs, really, or House of Lords, because they're trying to cover it up and they're not really going to give you a proper legal case or a proper... They're not really going to challenge it properly. And that's what happened with these 5 Tory councils who claim they were, the big case against ULEZ, against Sadiq Khan, 5 Conservative councils throwing loads of our money at it. They challenged they did challenge the expansion of ULEZ. There was no real true challenge to its legality, and any reference to that is not. They didn't, in the legal case, challenge the original legality of the whole thing based on Magna Carta and the Liberty of London at all. They did not. They didn't. And that Judge Jonathan Swift, who heard that case, the ULEZ case against Sadiq Khan, he was working for the government in finance at the time of Tony Blair. And then he was the first barrister who did the first case in the new Supreme Court. So he's the last person you want to be judging whether ULEZ is legal or not, when he was actually helping the government out with their finances and all of the brand new profits from the congestion charge. That you're not getting a fair case from them. Khan's a criminal, and he doesn't actually believe in the rights of this country, in the customs of this country, or the law of this country, And I don't think Starmer does either. Starmer claims that he's, believes in human rights, but he doesn't, because he's not upholding the actual law and constitution. And another thing that I'll throw in here briefly is all this to do with changing the planning rules or the building rules is also not possible in law. And it doesn't matter whether he's got this Attorney General guy, Richard Hermer KC, now his new Attorney General, who's meant to be, given a peerage and for this new position. Basically, Hermer's just going to help him scammers more and try and make it look more official because he's a more high-ranking barrister and he can get away with more scams, right? So, building and planning, right? Building and planning is only ever someone going to court with a case, right? I am a claimant, like in a civil case, right? Or even a criminal case where you're the plaintiff, right? What's happening in building and planning? There aren't really any law or legislation around it that you can change if you actually know what it is, right? Because what it is someone with money, right, is just bringing a case to a court, but in the council, not in the civil court, because they moved planning from the Court of Civil Requests to the local council, right? Guy walks into a court with a load of money that he's got to bring a case, like you or me could bring a case against ULEZ if we had a load of money. You or me could bring a case against ULEZ being illegal if we had the money, like all these people who are building houses. In fact, one person who happens to have a few million who can build a lot of houses, he could actually go to a court in London and prove that ULEZ is illegal and the congestion charge is illegal and get it all cancelled. But he's not. Instead, he's building houses for his own profit, right? And Starmer and his new government and King Charles don't want you and me to be able to actually oppose it. When in law, it's impossible to not be able to object to it. Because the objection is based on the right to petition about anything. Starmer cannot control the subject. He's trying to say that, you can oppose planning on how it's going to be, but not if they can do it or not, or vice versa, right? He can't do that. Because we, the subjects, have the right of free subject in anything. And the council is just the court, civil court, but in certain matters. The civil court is split into... They've split the civil court up, so certain matters the civil court deal with, mainly between private parties, and other civil matters the council deals with, like planning. I am a guy, and I'm putting a case forward that I want to build some houses, right? He's making a case for building them, right? who is the respondent to that case? Right? Well, it's us. And we make a case against it. But really, all courts are meant to have a jury in them anyway. And you've actually got a right to ask for a jury, even from Magna Carta. This is when they've been playing with all the regulations and the rules and the procedure rules the whole way through. But you've still got certain rights in certain circumstances. There were loads of people who have had magistrates' court trials and they said, I want a jury. And he's actually given them a jury, but he didn't invite the jury into the magistrates' court. He actually referred him over to the Crown Court, right? If Starmer's saying he's going to make it so an applicant who's bringing a case doesn't have to prove his case in court. His case is that he wants permission to build houses. So is Starmer going to make it so you don't need permission to build houses, right? But we can say, oh, what houses are like, or have a say in them. Actually, it can't work because unless he's saying, you know, it would. So let's get this straight, right? Effectively, right, at the moment, it's usually an offence in law to go and headbutt someone, right? So if you go and headbutt someone, right, that's a crime, right? Assault. Or you can argue whether it is assault or not. You can argue whether or not you assaulted someone. You've got to prove it. But if they prove you did, it's assault. If you revoke that law, if you revoke the law, so there is no legislation or law that says it is an offence to headbutt someone, right? Then you can go around headbutting people. So the only thing Starmer can do is say that it's no longer illegal to build houses without permission. So that's what he's claiming to do, making it not a crime or not an offence to build a house, right? So anyone with money can just buy land and build it. Money can buy. So private persons, this is actually worse than Liz Truss. This is worse than the worst Tory nightmare ever. It's so un-Labour Party. It's so Labour were meant to be opposite to the Tories. This is more Tory than Tory has ever been. Ever. It's more Tory than Tory. It means that money, right, wealth, being rich, can actually buy you absolutely anything you want in life without being accountable to the public or an area. An area where you live. So if you are a rich American businessman, you can literally start buying land in England just because you've got money and transforming it into anything you want. And the people can't stop you. This is worse. I think this is worse than Ireland, than those massive apartment blocks of building in Ireland. And they're kicking off now in Ireland at the moment over immigration. This is worse than Ireland, right? It means that money can buy rich people absolutely anything they want in life without any restraint at all, just because they've got money. And it's never, I don't know who's voted for Labour. What workers would agree with that? To make rich people even more powerful purely on money? It means that we're not being run by the conscience of our peers. means that we're not being judged by our equals or by other people in the community. It means that you don't get a fair trial. It basically means that if you, Jeff Bezos or someone, can literally buy the whole country. And I actually don't think they can do it. In fact, in Ireland, where they've got a similar thing, in Ireland, they've got it so if the building application is like a large number of houses, right, not just one or two, if it's over a certain number of houses, like 400 or something like that, then you can actually object to it. But you can petition the council to stop it. You can petition the council to do it. Now, that proves that Starmer cannot take away the right to petition from us, because you can petition about absolutely any subject, and it is purely on the people's will or conscience, like in Magna Carta. You don't have to take the law into account. You don't have to take the law into account when you make the judgment, when the public decide, which means that you can disregard Starmer's law. It's just on yes or no purely. Because of Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights, Starmer cannot stop you objecting against people building houses at all. It's actually impossible. And another thing is this: in law, in the current law, you can have referendums, little ones, and you can have petitions for referendums, and because of you can decide, you can in the petition, you can set out how the referendum will be run and what the rules are for it, and you can make the council agree to it that there'll be a referendum, and we'll say how it's going to be run and how the voting is going to go and so forth. All of the how it's going to be run, the referendum, which means that you can have them in an area, like you can have a referendum in a ward, right? It doesn't have to be the entire county, and it doesn't have to be like any area that's defined on the electoral register, like an MP's constituency, a local councillor's ward or constituency, or all of the wards or constituencies under an area, under a certain area, all of them, the totality of that county, right, or whatever. You can choose and design it and say, we want a referendum in this village or town, electorate area, whether it's 4,000 people or whatever. And 5% of those signatures, in the law currently, right, and Starmer probably can change this, but I don't care, right, it says that if you get the 5%, you're entitled to it, but none of the councils really know the law properly, because they've got people in the council who don't really understand it, haven't learned it, and aren't interested and haven't got the time. Also, then you've got the legal department who don't really know and are misleading people. This is where we need to challenge these people, right, and take them on. Because Starmer can't actually do what he wants to do. He can kind of bluff it and blag it, but the underlying rights, I don't. I don't see how the more and more houses he builds, the less and less farmland there is to feed everyone, right? Surely, the more and more houses you build in this country, then the less and less areas there are to grow things. And then you've got Extinction Rebellion kicking off about the climate and the environment. How are all these extra building vehicles and construction vehicles and materials going to affect the environment? So, and another thing is, when you, if a council makes a decision, you can actually raise it. You don't have to have a judicial review. A judicial review just checks if they've broken the law or haven't followed the process correctly. A judicial review is not actually appealing the decision in the council. You can appeal a council decision to Parliament. with the reference number, the case reference number, whether it's WZ48734 planning application, under the Constitution, you can appeal that planning application to the Parliament of England, to the Petitions Committee, with that planning number, and that is actually appealing the case to the higher authority, just like you appealed from in a civil case. You appealed from a magistrate's, a county court to a high court, and then from a high court to the Supreme Court. In a criminal case, you go from magistrate's court to Crown Court to High Court, and then you can go to Supreme Court. You can appeal a council decision to Parliament by petition, and it should. If you check there's a principle in the Justice of the Peace Act which says that they use this basis for other things, but it clearly does apply to everything, that any case, because it says that any orders or instruments or any judgments made are subject to an annulment if you appeal for a resolution from either houses of Parliament. Not that Starmer is going to, if Starmer's, trying to build more houses, he's probably going to, it might be a pathetic attempt to try and raise it to Parliament anyway. But remember, if they've got the Petitions Committee, we've got Lib Dems in there, a lot more Lib Dems now, and there still are some Conservative people in there. And like Dr. Tess Lowry's case to do with the World Health Organization and rights, they had the Petitions Committee is meant to be like a little tribunal, like a little court, and it's meant to represent the case fairly. That's why there's different members of different parties in the Petitions Committee, and it's meant to be a paid for court case, because we have elected, if you get the signatures to get it debated, you've afforded, in weight of public concern, it's worth more in money in people's will and signatures than what it is to pay barristers to represent you in a court, really. And, that Danny Kruger MP and people like that, Mark Franchise, people like that who represent, ministers can call for evidence, witnesses, summon papers and documents, and they're meant to properly decide on the matter based on, evidence that people give. In fact, you can represent yourself, or even suggest professional witnesses to go in there. You can have your own professional witnesses, and if it's for Parliament, and they're summoned, they've got to attend. They get costs covered. When you raise it to Parliament, it's meant to be all paid for under national insurance if you prove that it's important enough to raise it from. This is what's meant to happen with normal court cases as well. We're not getting the proper full usage of Parliament because we were given like a dummy procedure, a really rubbish procedure. So, Starmer, if he does this, people are going to believe that, and just probably lay back and, let him just, paint the town red. But really, if people spread this knowledge and learn the process, the basis is there to get signatures. It's not difficult to get signatures for your ward. There's nothing that the council can really do to stop it if you do get this 5% and you're entitled to a local referendum and propose it your way. Because if the this is what you should be using judicial review for. The fact that, we collected so much percent of the electorate and we're legally entitled to a referendum, It doesn't say what the actual area has to be. It can be a ward because it's any electoral area, I don't believe Starmer can do it, because ultimately the process is about opposing a case that somebody's brought. Unless Starmer, if he retains any part that, like, oh, it's only illegal. If Starmer claims that, oh, it's only illegal to build houses not in a certain style of what the locals want them to conform to, but they can't stop them building them, or even the other way around, even if, and we could stop them building them, that we can't decide what they're meant to be like, right? I can't see how we can separate that, because at the end of the day, there's got to be a case brought. Unless Starmer makes it not illegal anymore to build anything in law, right? So there's actually no law there, and you can just buy land and just, do what you want, right? So there's no case to make. If there is a case to make, right, for something about houses, right, then imagine this. You're in a court, right? It's not illegal to build houses. It's just illegal to build them not how the public want them to be built, right? Is that essentially what Starmer's saying? Correct me if I'm wrong. So you're in a court. There's a jury there. Someone walks in with more money than God, like Jeff Bezos, and just puts a massive suitcase of money on the table. I'm rich. I can do what the fuck I want, and no one in this town can stop me because of Keir Starmer's new government, right? Bangs, after he's fleeced everyone off by, charging them, £5 for a coffee or £16 for a can of Coke, after he's fleeced everyone, right? Starmer's not putting a cap on profits, is he, out of these people? This is worse than Liz Truss. This is worse than anything that Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak could ever conjure up in their minds, right? Starmer is more Tory than Tory. The fact that Supatansky and some of these other Labour supporters don't know that, Starmer is more Conservative than any Conservative Lord, Duke, Earl, Baron has ever been in the history of England. Starmer is more Tory, probably, than Charles. This idea that he's got has never been more Conservative. Rishi Sunak must be reeling. Rishi Sunak and Reese Mogg must be absolutely ecstatic, like they've won the lottery. Mogg can buy any land and build what the fuck he wants, and you're saying that this is a Labour Party for working class people, or people of the country who like the country, who are happy with the place they are in and how it is, and not greedy. You've got to be insane. There's never been a more insane idea ever, and I don't think he can do it, because even if building houses is a matter of state, there's matters of law, which is making and changing laws, which is what Starmer's proposing. That's a matter of law. So that's a matter of law, what is illegal and what's not illegal. Then you've got matters of religion, like, working on Sundays, which that would lower the climate crisis if we went back to, the day of rest on Sunday, which they definitely don't want to do that. They don't want to go back to the day of rest on Sunday, because, then they'll be out of, profit business, and they won't be able to make all that money which can afford them to build all these things. But yet we've got to put up with all the noise. Matters of law, matters of church, and matters of state. If building houses isn't a matter of state, right, which is not a, what about civil court? What about civil court? What about it's civil? Not a crime, not a criminal offence. What about civil law? Like someone's making loads of noise, right? What is he going to do? Give them immunities? If Jeff Bezos walks up with a mountain of money, right, and just buys every single person's house in the village, right? And he can just literally, or every field. It doesn't make sense to me, this idea at all. Because, surely in a civil court with a jury, right, you take the Bezos to court and say, Bezos is ruining this village. We want to stop him from doing it. Well, what he's doing is not illegal. Well, somebody could bring, 500, a million dogs into the village, right, and just have them sat there with fleas everywhere, if that ain't a nuisance in the street or something, it could be a nuisance in the street. It could be a nuisance in the village. If Bezos, you could say that it's going to create a nuisance in the village with all the traffic, and then get the magistrate to move it, or whatever, or the judge to move it. If you've got, what is the case that you bring? If you go into a civil court and Bezos has bought all the fields in the town, right, and he's going to build on them and you can't stop him, right? If that isn't harassment, right, that could be a nuisance, could be harassment, it could be harassing the entire village. That if the doctor gets a certificate to the village and they say this is causing us harassment, right, all what he's doing to us, right, then he could be ordered to move it away, because harassment, it doesn't need intent from the person who's causing harassment. It only needs to be proved that you are being harassed, right? You're being vexed or stressed or harassed by an other person or entity, right? And it can and if they don't stop, well, they can stop because he doesn't have to build the houses. He doesn't need to build the houses. He wants to build them. He liked to build the houses. Jeff Bezos would like to build houses. He doesn't need to, right? He doesn't need to build them. He'd like to build them. He wants to build them to make money. If that's harassing the whole village, then he can move away and do it somewhere else. That's a civil case. Or that's a criminal case, sorry. You can have a civil case. And if there's a jury sat there, on what legal basis? On what law? On what legislation? Well, Starmer says there is no legislation. Well, the jury don't have to decide on legislation. They can decide on fact of law, right? Or on their own conscience. If a jury in a court of civil request doesn't have to decide based on point of law, then you don't need a law. The defendant doesn't need to be breaking a law. You don't need a charge. They say will be judged by the evidence. Well, the evidence is we don't like it. We're being harassed. And the jury can decide based on their conscience whether they think the people in the village are being harassed or not, on the evidence, not on point of law. It doesn't have to be legislation. I don't even need any legislation. In fact, on the peers of England, I don't care what Starmer, he can stick the law where he wants. Starmer's legislation means nothing. Nothing. Starmer's law means nothing. Zero. Zilch. The people of the village decide. And if they're all Labour voters, and if they want to build even more houses, let them build them. But if they don't, if they're Lib Dems, or if they're Green, and they don't want them there, then they don't have to have them. But why should someone with a massive pile of money, which they've only got because they've fleeced everyone anyway, why should they have supreme power to dictate what the landscape is going to be of the country? Because that is literally, there's nothing in the history of the world which could be more conservative and Tory. It's like combining Boris, Reese, Mogg, King Charles, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, all into one person. Starmer is not Labour. He doesn't represent normal people. Starmer is a new supreme conservative Tory. He's a new supreme being of conservative.